Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday service for March 15th of 2026. Well, here we are, moving closer and closer to Easter. So today we're going to be discussing the final chapters in Charles Fillmore's book, Keep a True Lent. And if you have the book and have been going through it every day, you'll notice that each chapter has been taking us deeper and deeper into our own selves, having us look at different aspects of our own being and drawing us into a more spiritually oriented life. To Charles Fillmore's, Lent is a spiritual journey of consciousness, and he treats Lent as a progressive awakening of the Christ mind within each and every one of us. And in these last chapters of the book, Fillmore guides us through several steps: transformation of the intellect, the discipline of the mind, the recognition of divine abundance, and finally, the practice of what he calls faith thinking, which is the call to go all the way into Christ consciousness. And together they describe the path of inner resurrection. Now, Fillmore taught that humanity was not meant to struggle on this earth plane, but rather that each person is a potential Christ in expression. So our spiritual journey is not about becoming something new. It's about awakening what's always been within each and every one of us. So Fillmore's chapter on spiritualizing the intellect teaches us that the intellect alone cannot reveal spiritual truth. It has to be illumined by spirit. The human intellect is a powerful tool, but it can become a barrier if it operates apart from divine wisdom. Now, spiritual growth occurs when the intellect, as he puts it, becomes a servant of the Christ mind. Now, the intellect is like a lamp, and spirit is the electricity that causes it to shine. And he says that when our thinking becomes spiritualized, our reasoning faculty becomes insight, and our knowledge becomes wisdom, and of course, our thoughts become prayers. And in this way, the intellect becomes a channel of divine understanding. Now, Ernest Holmes once stated, "The universal mind contains all knowledge," which reminds us that the intellect becomes creative when it's aligned with spiritual truth. Edgar Cayce taught that the mind must align with spirit for creation to be harmonious. He stated, "Attune the mental body to its spiritual source." And now Myrtle Fillmore once stated that the mind must learn to cooperate with God. And of course, Emily Cady, in her book, Lessons in Truth, that we're doing throughout the year, stated that the divine mind expresses through man. But what does it all mean? And Katie once wrote that the intellect must surrender to spirit, not in weakness, but in illumination. So in unity, we say that thoughts are things. And once we really, truly get what that really means, then we really begin watching what we think. Because we really begin to understand that to say I'm sick puts it out there for the universe to bring more sickness into our lives. And I know that that statement can bring up so many thoughts of denial that that is a truth. But actually, once you begin to just observe what happens in your own life after making statements like that, you will begin to see how things change around you just with thought itself. So as we begin to look at spiritualizing our mind, Fillmore takes us in the next chapter to exploring the relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. To Fillmore, the conscious mind actually chooses thought. The subconscious mind manifests them because it's the subconscious mind that is fully connected to the energy of source. He wrote that the subconscious mind is like soil. It doesn't question the seed. Whatever seed is put into the ground will grow. So whatever thoughts are planted will grow. And if we plant fear, fear grows. If we plant faith, faith grows. Therefore, Fillmore contends that Lent becomes a time of what he calls mental purification. The purpose of denial and affirmation, which are central practices in Fillmore's teaching, is to remove all false beliefs and plant divine truth. So we deny fear, sickness, lack, limitation, and we affirm life, strength, abundance, divine guidance, joy, peace, harmony. And it is this discipline that gradually reprograms the subconscious mind with the truth of our being, which is we are the Christ. Now, Ernest Holmes made statements that the mind is a magnet, but also that thought patterns can be reversed, which is what Emily Cady wrote in the book Lessons in Truth. She wrote, thought is formative, and the Christ mind transforms consciousness. Edgar Cayce also wrote about thought patterns being reversed when he wrote, change your thinking to change your life. And of course, Myrtle Fillmore, who really showed us that changing your thinking can change your life since she overcame tuberculosis, wrote, speak life to the body and thoughts determine experience. So if, as Fillmore wrote, the subconscious mind is like soil, it doesn't question the seed, whatever seed is put into the ground will grow. We need to watch what we put into it. But now here is where it gets a little tricky. There are some people who finally really getting this begin to panic because of all the negative thoughts they've held. They look at their bodies and see them not working correctly, or they look at their finances and see that they're not really strong, or whatever. And then they begin to feel as if they missed the boat, so to say. They feel like it's too late to obtain Christ consciousness. And that is the beauty of the next chapter, where Fillmore talks about the soul's journey. And in this chapter, which is about reincarnation, Fillmore describes the soul as progressing through many experiences in its journey toward spiritual perfection, which means we don't have to do it all in one lifetime. The purpose of life is growth, and each experience or lifetime, whether it's joyful or painful, is an opportunity for the soul to awaken. So we don't have to be concerned. We just keep on keeping on, because the Christ pattern is the destiny of all humanity. And in this vision, Jesus is not an exception, but an example of the perfected human being. Now, Fillmore wrote that Jesus, the Christ, came to awaken humanity to its divine potential. And he wrote that the journey of the soul, therefore, is a journey from sense consciousness to Christ consciousness. But we don't have to do it all in one lifetime. And the beauty about that statement is that we can relax and just do the best we can at any and every moment in time. But the irony is, the more we relax about it, the more we open to the flow of source in us and as us, which expands us automatically into our true Christed selves. Ernest Holmes wrote, to forgive the past and begin again. And in doing so, the mind unfolds into greater recognition of our true self. Now, Edgar Cayce once stated that meditation relaxes the body and attunes the mind to spirit, which allows the flow of spirit to come into the body and awaken the spirit within without any struggle on our part. And Myrtle Fillmore wrote that healing comes through spiritual realization. And the more the relaxed the body is, the greater the flow of spiritual realization can occur within the bodily form. Now, Emily Cady wrote, truth awakens the soul, and that spiritual growth is inevitable. We just need to allow it to happen. So, really, the soul's journey through every lifetime is the unfoldment of our divine identity. We just are being given opportunity after opportunity to expand that unfoldment every moment of every day, which brings us to the next chapter, and one that can trip us up very easily. So, how many of you were raised with the concept that you can't be spiritual and have money? That the money is the root of all evil. And I could go on and on with all the statements that are out there about the evil of money and prosperity. And yet, another profound teaching of Fillmore's is about God's prosperity and abundance. Now, Fillmore wrote that scarcity is not a divine reality, it's a human belief. God is infinite substance, and humanity draws from that infinite supply through consciousness. So, when we align our thinking with divine abundance, our lives begin to reflect that truth. Fear of lack disappears when we fully realize that the God is the source of all that is. So when we begin to move our thoughts to, fearful thoughts to thoughts of abundance and prosperity in all areas of our lives, we begin to see that reflected around us. So remember what Fillmore wrote: the subconscious mind is like soil. It doesn't question the seed. Whatever seed is put into it will grow. So just begin to plant seeds of prosperity and abundance into that subconscious mind of yours, and just watch it grow into something bigger and better than what you have now. Ernest Holmes wrote that life reflects your belief, and the infinite mind contains all possibility. And he gave us an affirmation to you: life lies open to me, rich and abundant. And Edgar Cayce wrote that the mind directs creative forces and thought shapes experience. He told us to align with the infinite and watch your world change. And of course, Myrtle Fillmore, who did overcome tuberculosis, affirmed, I am a child of God. I do not inherit sickness. And wrote that prosperity flows from spiritual consciousness and to trust God as our source. And she also wrote that faith reveals abundance. Now, she was a great believer in faith because, as she once wrote, it is through faith that I held to my belief that I could overcome the tuberculosis in my body. And Emily Cady stated, real wealth is the consciousness of God, and that divine substance fills the universe. Now, she also was a great professor of faith, as she firmly believed that faith reveals the invisible supply. So the final chapter of the book is faith thinking, and going all the way. Now, these chapters culminate in a call to faith thinking and complete dedication to the Christ path, which is a key to what Fillmore has already spoken. That the journey of the soul is a journey from sense consciousness to Christ consciousness. And faith thinking means thinking from the standpoint of spirit rather than appearances. Now, faith does not ignore circumstances, it transcends them. Fillmore writes that Jesus went all the way from human consciousness to divine realization, opening the path to humanity. However, as Casey says, the soul that Jesus was lived through several incarnations to reach the point that he did in that final life of him. Because to do as Jesus did, to become the Christ by going all the way, means truly purifying our thoughts, spiritualizing the intellect, mastering that mind of ours, and recognizing divine abundance, living by the faith that this all is real. It's the journey from the outer self to the full expression of the inner Christ, which is in each and every one of us. Now, Ernest Holmes stated that within us is limited possibility, and that faith overcomes fear, and divine intelligence is always guiding us. Edgar Casey stated that we are to change our thoughts to change our life, and reiterated that mind is the builder. And Myrtle told us that truth renews the body, and to hold steadfast in that truth, because faith reveals divine power. And of course, Emily Cady wrote that faith reveals spiritual reality, that truth transforms consciousness, and most importantly, the Christ in you is your hope of glory. So the message of Lent is not about sorrow, but about transformation. And that through spiritual discipline, we move from fear into faith, from living our lives from our intellect to living life from spiritual illumination, and from limitation to abundance, from human consciousness to Christ consciousness. So the invitation of Jesus the Christ is the same as it was today as it was 2,000 years ago. Follow me all the way. And if we can do that, then the resurrection ceases to be only an historical event. It becomes this experience within the soul. The stone rolls away from the tomb of human limitation, and the Christ within rises in power, wisdom, and love. We have 3 weeks to go for us to celebrate Easter Sunday. That is 21 days to spend more time in meditation, thinking of your Christed self, and to affirm whatever it is that you want in this life is being already yours. You know, they say it takes 21 days to break a habit and create a new one. So my invitation to you is to spend this next 21 days doing this exercise and see how your life can be changed. So God bless each and every one of us. Thank you so much for joining today and listening to this. God bless each and one. Take care. Many, many blessings.